Beth leaned into my cubicle just as the morning sun hit the glass towers outside. From the 15th floor, downtown Denver looked clean and far away, like it had nothing to do with anyone's real life. "Maya, nice catch on that audit trail," she said, setting a thin file on my keyboard. "IRS just escalated it. Criminal investigation." I nodded like it was any other Wednesday. "Thank you." "You don't miss patterns," she added, already turning away. "That's why you're here." When she left, I opened the file and read the header once, then again, slower. Case. IRS, 2024. Keo, 1937. Subject. Northridge Tech Solutions, LLC. The name sat there like a small weight, not heavy enough to knock me over, just heavy enough to change the air in my lungs. I closed the file and kept my face neutral. I had learned, a long time ago, that showing surprise only gives people a place to push. My desk plate caught my eye when I reached for my coffee. Maya Harlan Booth, CPA. It looked ordinary. It felt earned. That part mattered. The drive home took 26 minutes. I parked in my building's garage, rode the elevator up, and stepped into a condo I bought 3 years ago. 1 bedroom. Nothing fancy. Mine. Keys into the ceramic bowl by the door. Shoes lined up. Jacket on the hook. I reheated leftover pasta, ate at the table, washed the dish right after. Small routines. Quiet proof. My phone buzzed while I was wiping down the counter. Unknown number, local area code. I let it ring out. A minute later, another buzz. Voicemail. I didn't play it. Not yet. I opened my laptop first, because curiosity is easier than feelings. I searched. Northridge Tech Solutions Leadership Team. The site loaded with bright photos and confident titles. I scrolled down and stopped when I saw her. Valerie Harlan, VP of Finance. My mother. Professional headshot, soft lighting, same controlled smile she used to wear at fundraisers. It had been 13 years since I'd heard her voice in person, but my body recognized her face faster than my mind did. I didn't stare for long. I took a screenshot and saved it into a folder on my desktop labeled Archive. Then I clicked into her public posts and found one from years ago about smart tax strategy, written like a friendly tip and packaged like a warning. Contractors, deductions, basis adjustments, clean language for messy behavior. I sat back and rested one hand on the edge of the table. My heartbeat stayed steady, but my thoughts started lining up in rows, the way they do when something is about to become a case. Another buzz. Text message this time. "Maya, it's Ryan. Please don't hang up on me. It's serious. Mom and Dad are in trouble. I'm at the coffee shop on Pearl. I'll wait until close. Please." I hadn't heard from my brother in years. The last time, he called late at night, drunk, apologizing in circles, and still refusing to tell the truth to the people who needed to hear it. Back then, I recorded the call. Not because I was plotting anything, because I was 17 once, standing in cold rain, and I learned early that memory is fragile, but files aren't. I stared at Ryan's message until the screen dimmed. Then I stood, put my phone face down, and went to my bedroom closet. On the top shelf was a small pouch I almost never opened. Inside it was a USB drive with a strip of masking tape on it. The tape had one date written in neat, plain handwriting. October 7th, 2013. I didn't plug it in. I didn't need to. I just held it for a moment, like checking the weight of a key before you decide whether you're ready to use it. Because the truth is, this didn't start with the IRS. It started when I was 17, and my brother was 22, and my parents chose his story without asking me a single question. And the first sound that night wasn't a scream. It was wood splintering upstairs, sharp and final, the kind of sound that makes you move before you think. I set the USB drive back in the pouch, closed the closet door, and picked up my keys. Then I walked out into the hallway, already knowing I was about to step back into the same family I'd left behind, and that this time I wouldn't be walking in empty-handed. The coffee shop on Pearl was warm in that way places are when they're trying to feel harmless. Soft music. People hunched over laptops. A line at the counter moving slowly, like nobody had anything urgent to do. Ryan was at a small table near the back, facing the door. He saw me immediately and stood halfway, then stopped, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to take up space. I didn't hug him. I didn't smile. I just walked over and sat down across from him. He looked thinner than I remembered. Not sick, exactly. More like someone whose life kept slipping out of his hands in small ways. His hair was cut too short, like he'd done it himself. His fingers kept tapping the paper cup in front of him, even though it was already empty. Maya, he said quietly. Ryan. He swallowed. Thank you for coming. I didn't answer that. I set my phone on the table, screen down, and rested my hands on either side of it. He tried to hold my eyes and couldn't. His gaze kept drifting to the window and back, like he expected someone to walk in and save him from this conversation. It's Mom and Dad, he said. They're in trouble. Federal trouble. I watched his mouth while he spoke. People can lie with their words. Their mouth usually tells you first. I know, I said. He blinked, surprised. You do? I saw the case file this morning. The color drained from his face a little. He leaned forward, lowering his voice even though no one was listening. Is it bad? He asked. Their attorney says it's bad. He says if they don't get ahead of it, it could be prison. I let that sit between us for a moment, not as punishment, just as reality. Ryan rubbed his palms on his jeans. They're older now, he added, like that was supposed to change what had happened. I kept my tone even. What do you want from me? He hesitated. Then he said it in one breath, like if he didn't get it out fast, he wouldn't be able to. They need someone in the family to write a statement, an impact statement, something that shows reconciliation, that they're not monsters, that they made mistakes. I nodded once. Very small, like I was acknowledging a line item in a spreadsheet. You want me to help them, I said. Ryan's eyes flashed with relief, too quick, like he'd already decided this was going to work. I want you to, he started. No, I said calmly. I want you to finish the sentence accurately. He stopped. His throat moved when he swallowed. I want you to write a letter, he said again, slower this time. So the judge sees they're not, I don't know, a risk, so they don't go to prison. I looked at him for a long second. His hands had stopped tapping. Now they were gripping the edge of the table. What makes you think I would do that? I asked. His face tightened. Because they're still our parents. I didn't react. I let him hear how quiet it was after he said it. Ryan's voice got softer, almost pleading. Maya, I know what happened. I know it was wrong. I know I was part of it. But it was a long time ago. And they're terrified. Mom can't sleep. Dad's acting like he's fine, but he's not. He keeps talking about how humiliating it will be. Humiliating. That was the word he chose. Not painful, not unjust, not shameful. I watched him like I was watching someone testify. You said you know what happened, I said. Tell me what you mean. He blinked again. I mean, the violin. It wasn't a violin, I said. He flinched. Right, the cello. I nodded once. Keep going. Ryan looked down at his hands. I broke it, he said, and the words came out small. I had a meltdown. I panicked, and when you came in, I blamed you. I told them you did it. I didn't correct him. I didn't fill in the gaps for him. I just waited. He went on, quicker now, like confession gets easier if you don't pause. And they believed me, and they... He stopped, his jaw working. They threw you out. My fingers stayed still on the table. My voice stayed level. How old was I? He looked up, eyes wet. 17. And how old were you? 22. I nodded again. So you were an adult. He didn't argue that. He couldn't. The barista called out an order at the counter. A couple laughed near the window. Life kept moving around our table like we weren't sitting in something heavy. Ryan wiped under one eye with the back of his hand. I'm not proud of it, he said. I hate myself for it. I didn't respond to that either. I wasn't there to manage his feelings. I'm going to ask you a question, I said. Answer it directly. He nodded quickly. Okay. Did you ever tell them the truth? His mouth opened, then closed. His shoulders sagged. No, he admitted. Not fully. I watched him closely. Not fully, I repeated. I tried, he said, then rushed to explain. I tried once, years ago. Mom cried and said I was confusing things. Dad said I needed to stop dragging up the past. They didn't want to hear it. I kept my face neutral. So you stopped. He nodded, ashamed. I picked up my cup of water and took a slow sip, mostly to give myself a beat. Not because I was emotional, because pacing matters. Ryan leaned forward again. Maya, please, I know you don't owe them anything. I know you don't owe me anything. But this is bigger than us now. If they go to prison, it's over. For them. I set the cup down. And when they locked me out, I said, what was it for me? He didn't answer. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I slept outside, I continued, still calm. In weather that could have put me in the hospital. I had a backpack and a little cash. That was it. And they didn't call. They didn't check. They didn't ask where I was. You know that, right? Ryan's eyes squeezed shut for a moment, like he was trying not to see it. I know, he whispered. I nodded slightly, like I was marking a fact as confirmed. He reached across the table a few inches, then stopped, his hand hovering in the air like he wanted to touch my wrist, and remembered he didn't have that right. I'll do anything, he said, if you'll just help them. I looked at him. Then I said, okay. His head snapped up. Hope hit his face so fast it looked painful, but I didn't soften. I didn't smile. I'll consider writing something, I said, but not because you asked nicely, and not because they're scared. Ryan's breath caught. Then why? I leaned back in my chair and kept my voice steady. Because this is the first time in 13 years you've shown up in front of me while there's something at stake. And I'm going to use that. He stared at me, confused. I continued. You came here to ask me to protect them from consequences. If I do anything at all, it will be because you finally do what you should have done the first week after you lied. Ryan's lips trembled. What? What do you want? I didn't answer right away. I opened my bag slowly and took out my laptop, setting it on the table, but I didn't lift the screen yet. Ryan watched the movement like it was a weapon. I kept my eyes on him. Before we talk about what I want, I said, I need you to understand something. He nodded quickly, desperate. Okay. I didn't survive those years on forgiveness, I said. I survived on documentation, on systems, on proof. Ryan swallowed hard. Maya. I lifted the laptop screen just enough for him to see the desktop background, plain and gray, and the folder sitting there in the corner. Archive. His gaze locked onto it. Then I closed the laptop again without opening the folder. Not yet. Outside, the light had shifted. Evening was coming in through the windows in a slow wash. The coffee shop felt quieter, like it was settling toward closing. I watched Ryan's face and said, now I'm going to take you back to the night it started, not the version you told them, the version I can prove. Then I let the silence stretch, long enough for him to realize this wasn't going to be an emotional conversation, it was going to be an orderly one, and I was the one setting the rules. I didn't open the folder right away. Instead, I looked at Ryan and said, before we talk about today, we're going to get the timeline straight. He nodded like he was bracing himself. October 7th, I said. You were in the music room upstairs. I was in the kitchen doing homework. I heard something break. He stared at the table. Yeah. You told Mom and Dad that I pushed you, I continued. That I was jealous, that I'd been angry for weeks. His jaw tightened. I remember. I came upstairs after the sound, I said evenly. Not before. He didn't argue. I reached into my bag and pulled out the USB drive. Small, ordinary, a strip of white tape with a date written in black ink. I placed it on the table between us. Ryan's eyes locked onto it like it was something alive. What is that? He asked quietly, even though I could see he already knew. It's a copy, I said, of the security footage from the music room. His head snapped up. There was no footage. The system crashed. That's what you told them. He went very still. I logged in the next morning, I continued. Before you deleted it, I downloaded the file. I backed it up 3 different places. I've kept it since. His breathing changed. Not dramatic, just shallower. You've had it this whole time? He asked. Yes? Why didn't you? He stopped himself. Why didn't I run back and force them to watch it? I finished for him. Because I was 17, and they had already decided who I was. I let that settle. I didn't need to win an argument, I said. I needed to survive. The barista began stacking chairs near the front. The sound of metal legs scraping tile cut through the room in short bursts. Ryan's voice dropped to almost nothing. What does it show? I met his eyes. It shows you alone in the room. It shows you reading an email. It shows you picking up the cello and slamming it into the floor, more than once. His face drained again. He pressed his lips together. It shows me walking in after, I added. It shows you looking at me and saying, "This is your fault now." He covered his mouth with his hand. I didn't soften my tone. I didn't harden it either. It's 14 minutes long, I said, clear audio. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Ryan whispered, "You could have destroyed me." I shook my head slightly. "No, you destroyed yourself. I just kept a record." That was the first shift. Not loud, not dramatic, just a change in gravity. He wasn't talking to the girl he'd blamed anymore. He was talking to someone who had held a piece of the truth for over a decade and never used it recklessly. He leaned back in his chair, eyes unfocused. "Does Mom know?" he asked. "No." "Does Dad?" "No." "Has anyone seen it?" "One other person," I said, "a therapist, in a controlled setting." He let out a slow breath. "I deserve that," he murmured. I didn't comment on what he deserved. Instead, I said, "That's not the only thing I have." His eyes flicked back up to me. 3 years ago, I continued, you called me. Late. You were drinking. His expression shifted immediately. He remembered. "You apologized," I said. "You admitted you lied. You said you were afraid of disappointing them." His voice cracked. "I was. I recorded that call," I said. His shoulders slumped forward. "Of course you did." "Yes," I said simply. "It's legal here. One-party consent." He gave a short, humorless breath that might have been a laugh. "And that's not all," I added. I opened my bag again and pulled out a thin envelope. Inside were printed screenshots, text messages. "Your former roommate sent these to me," I said. "Messages from a week after I was kicked out." Ryan's eyes widened. "He kept those?" "Apparently." I slid one page across the table. His own words stared back at him. "I can't believe I let her take the fall. If I tell them now, I lose everything." He stared at the paper like it was written in someone else's handwriting. "You kept all of this," he said quietly. "Yes." "Why?" I held his gaze. "Because when people rewrite history, they count on you not having receipts." That was the second shift. He wasn't just facing me, he was facing documentation. Dates, files, systems. He rubbed his forehead slowly. "So what now?" he asked. "Now," I said, "we talk about leverage." He looked up sharply. "I'm not threatening you," I clarified. "I'm explaining structure." I spoke carefully, like I was laying out audit steps. "Step 1, I said, holding up a finger. "You correct the public record." His throat tightened. "Public?" "Yes, the same way the lie was made public." He closed his eyes briefly. "Step 2, I continued. "You tell Mom and Dad the full truth in person. No editing, no protecting their feelings." He nodded faintly. "Step 3, I said. "We establish boundaries before I consider writing any statement." He opened his eyes. "What kind of boundaries?" "Financial restitution," I said calmly. "The college fund that was used to replace the instrument. With interest." His head lifted slightly, surprised by the precision. "And mandatory family therapy," I added. "Minimum 6 months. Not for appearances, for structure." Ryan stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You really thought this through," he said. I've had 13 years, I replied. The coffee shop lights dimmed slightly. Closing time. Ryan looked down at the USB drive again. Are you going to show them? He asked. That depends on what happens next, I said. Silence this time wasn't awkward. It was functional. He straightened slowly in his chair. I'll do it, he said. I'll tell them everything. I didn't smile. You'll tell them tomorrow, I said, and after that, you'll make a public post. Clear, direct, no excuses. He swallowed. Okay. And you'll send me screenshots, I added, before anything gets deleted. He nodded again. I picked up the USB drive and slipped it back into my bag. I'm not doing this for revenge, I said. I'm doing this because the truth has a cost, and you don't get a discount just because you're family. Ryan looked smaller now. Not broken, just stripped of illusion. As we stood up, he hesitated. Maya, he said softly, why didn't you ever use it before? I adjusted the strap of my bag and answered without hesitation. Because I needed to build a life first. One where the truth couldn't be taken away from me. Then I walked out into the cool evening air, leaving him inside under the soft coffee shop lights, finally sitting with the full weight of what he'd done. And for the first time in 13 years, I wasn't the one outside in the cold. The next morning, I didn't check my phone right away. I made coffee. Oat milk. 2 ice cubes. I opened my blinds and let the light in slowly. Then I sat at the table and opened my laptop. Order first, emotion second. At 8:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Ryan, I'm going over there now. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a blank document and titled it, Conditions, not demands, not revenge. Conditions. I've learned that language shapes structure, I wrote slowly. Step 1. Full verbal confession to both parents in person. Step 2. Public written statement correcting the original accusation in the same group it was posted. Step 3. Financial restitution equal to original college fund plus calculated interest. Step 4. Minimum 6 months licensed family therapy. Step 5. No contact outside agreed structure until therapy begins. I saved the document. Then I opened a spreadsheet. Original college fund balance, $41,500. Average annual conservative interest over 13 years, 4.5% compounded. I typed the formula carefully. Final number, 64,872. I adjusted it to $65,000 even. Clean number, clear, not symbolic, mathematical. At 9:37 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Ryan, I told them. I let the message sit while I finished my coffee. At 9:42 a.m., another one. Ryan, it was bad. Dad yelled at first, Mom cried. I showed them the screenshots. I told them about the recording. Pause. Ryan, they didn't know about the footage. I read that twice. Then I replied, Me, did you tell them you're making a public post? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Ryan, Dad said that would ruin their reputation. I stared at that sentence for a long moment. Reputation, still the priority. Me, and what did you say? A minute passed. Ryan, I said the truth already did that. That was the first sign he might actually be changing. At 10:15 a.m., my phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, Dad. Voicemail again. Then a text from Mom. Mom, please call us. We need to talk. I turned the phone face down. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is leverage. I waited until 1 p.m. before replying. Me. I will consider writing a statement after the following conditions are met. I attached the document. 3 minutes later, Dad responded. Dad. This is excessive. I didn't respond. 5 minutes after that, Mom. Mom, we don't have that kind of money available immediately. I opened my spreadsheet again and reviewed the numbers, even though I already knew they were correct. Me. You had it available when you replaced the instrument. No emotion, just fact. There was no response for almost 2 hours. During that time, I went to the gym. 30 minutes on the treadmill, 12 minutes stretching, shower, routine. When I came back to my phone, there were 6 missed calls and 1 message from Ryan. Ryan. I'm posting now. I sat down on my couch before opening anything. Then another message. Ryan. It's up. He sent screenshots. The post was plain. Direct. No performance. I lied in 2013. I destroyed my own instrument and blamed my sister. My parents believed me without verifying. They forced her to leave the house at 17. Everything said about her was untrue. He signed his full name. No excuses. No, we were all stressed. No minimizing. I exhaled slowly. Within minutes, reactions were appearing under the post. Shock, questions, silence from certain people, and then a comment from someone who had written harsh words about me years ago. I'm sorry, Maya. I should have asked. I didn't feel triumph. I felt alignment. At 4:18 p.m., my banking app sent a notification. Incoming wire transfer, $30,500. Half. I didn't react immediately. 5 minutes later, another notification. Incoming wire transfer, $32,500. Full amount. I stared at the numbers for a long moment, not because of the money, because transfers require acknowledgement. They had chosen action over pride. At 4:31 p.m., Dad texted. Dad, we've transferred the funds. We will schedule therapy. I replied with one sentence. Me. Send confirmation of the therapy intake appointment. No emojis, no commentary. By 6 p.m., I had an email from a licensed family therapist's office confirming our first session date. 3 weeks from now, I forwarded it to myself and saved it in a new folder. Reconciliation structure. That evening, I opened the original case file from work again. Northridge Tech Solutions. I reread the flagged transactions, the shell contractors, the inflated basis adjustments, the patterns. I hadn't reported my parents. I had reported irregularities. The system did the rest. That distinction matters. At 9:17 p.m., Ryan sent one more message. Ryan, they're scared. I typed back slowly. Me. They should be. That's what accountability feels like. Then I put my phone face down. For 13 years, I had lived quietly, with proof. Now I had converted it into structure. No yelling, no confrontation scenes, just documents, transfers, appointments, public correction, truth, processed through systems. And for the first time, my family wasn't reacting to emotion. They were reacting to consequences. I turned off the lights, stood by the window, and watched the city settle into night. There was still one more step left. Court. The therapy office was in a quiet part of town, tucked between a bakery and a dental clinic. Neutral ground. Not my neighborhood, not theirs. I arrived 10 minutes early. I like being early. It gives me time to observe the room before it fills with other people's emotions. The waiting area smelled faintly of lavender and floor cleaner. Soft gray chairs, a low table with neatly stacked magazines, a white noise machine humming near the door. At exactly 9:58 a.m., my parents walked in together. Ryan followed a few steps behind. My mother looked smaller than I remembered. My father looked exactly the same, except older around the eyes. They saw me. They didn't wave. I nodded once. No hugs, no performance. At 10 sao, the therapist opened the door. Good morning, she said. Calm voice. Steady eye contact. Come in. Her office had one couch and two chairs angled toward each other. I chose a single chair across from the couch. Physical distance matters. They sat together, Ryan on the end. The therapist introduced herself, then said, "This space is structured. One person speaks at a time. We focus on facts and impact, not image." I appreciated that. She looked at me first. Maya, since you initiated this process, you may begin. I didn't rush. I'm not here to relitigate what happened, I said. The facts are documented. My father shifted slightly but didn't interrupt. I'm here to define terms moving forward, I continued. If there is to be any relationship, it will be built on 3 pillars: acknowledgement, accountability, and consistency. The therapist nodded. My mother's eyes were already wet. I want to be clear, I said evenly. What happened when I was 17 was not discipline, it was expulsion, based on a lie. My father opened his mouth, then closed it when the therapist lifted a hand gently. I need you to say it plainly, I said, looking at them both. You removed a minor from your home without verification. Silence. My mother spoke first, voice trembling. We believed Ryan. I know, I said. My father cleared his throat. We acted too quickly. That's not accurate, I replied calmly. You acted decisively, just without evidence. The therapist wrote something down. I want to hear the words, I continued. Not mistake, not misjudgment. The actual words. My father's jaw tightened. Then finally, we were wrong. My mother nodded through tears. We were wrong. I didn't react emotionally. I just let the statement settle in the room. That's acknowledgement, I said quietly. Now accountability. The therapist leaned forward slightly. What does accountability look like to you, Maya? It looks like continued compliance with the legal process, I said. No attempts to minimize, no reframing this as persecution. My father stiffened slightly. This investigation, I continued, did not happen because of me. It happened because of documented financial irregularities. He exhaled through his nose, but didn't argue. I recused myself from the case once I recognized the connection. I added, I did not influence the outcome. The therapist glanced at my father. Is that understood? He nodded once. Understood. Ryan sat quietly, hands clasped. I turned toward him briefly. You've taken responsibility publicly. That matters. He nodded. I should have done it years ago. Yes, I said. Not harsh, just factual. The therapist shifted the focus back. What are your boundaries moving forward? I answered without hesitation. Structured contact only. No surprise visits. No financial discussions unless requested. No rewriting the past to make it more comfortable. My mother wiped her face. We just want to fix this. You can't fix it, I said gently. You can only behave differently now. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then my father said something I didn't expect. I am proud of what you've built. The words hung there. I didn't rush to accept them. Thank you, I said after a pause. It felt neutral, not warm, not cold, just acknowledged. The therapist glanced at the clock. We have 10 minutes left. Is there anything unsaid that needs to be addressed today? I thought for a moment. Yes, I said. I looked at both of them. If I write a statement to the court, it will not erase what happened. It will simply state that accountability has begun. Not that harm didn't occur. My father nodded slowly. We understand, he said. That was new, clear, direct. The session ended at 11:30. In the parking lot, my mother hesitated like she might step toward me. I held my ground but didn't step back. We'll see you next week, I said calmly. No hugging, no dramatic reconciliation, just continuation. As I walked to my car, I felt something unfamiliar. Not victory. Alignment. Inside my car, I sat for a moment before starting the engine. Confrontation doesn't require volume, it requires clarity. And for the first time, they weren't debating my reality. They were sitting inside it. I started the engine and drove home, knowing the final step would happen in a courtroom, not a living room. The courthouse downtown is made of stone and glass. Clean lines, neutral colors. It doesn't feel dramatic inside, it feels procedural. I arrived early again. I chose a seat in the back row. Not hidden, just not central. My parents walked in together, Ryan behind them. They saw me. This time, my father gave a small nod. I returned it. No one spoke before the hearing started. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Then we sat. The prosecutor summarized the case clearly. Underreported income, improper contractor classifications, inflated basis adjustments, total tax liability calculated at $612,130. The numbers were precise. No adjectives. My father stared straight ahead. My mother kept her hands folded tightly in her lap. The judge referenced the documentation. the transaction trails, the audit summaries, the compliance review. Then he mentioned the impact statements. He flipped a page. "There is a letter submitted by the defendant's daughter," he said. I kept my expression neutral. He read a portion aloud. The letter did not defend their actions. It did not minimize the harm. It stated that restitution had begun, that therapy was ongoing, that accountability appeared genuine and measurable, and one sentence near the end: "Mercy without accountability is sentiment. Accountability with structure is repair." I had written that slowly. The judge paused. "This court recognizes the unusual position of the family member involved," he continued. "The documentation provided suggests sustained effort toward restitution and compliance." He looked up. "Given the absence of prior criminal history and the full restitution plan submitted, this court sentences the defendants to 5 years probation, full repayment under supervised plan, and mandatory financial oversight." No prison, no applause, just the quiet sound of consequence landing. My mother closed her eyes briefly. My father exhaled. The gavel struck once. It was over. In the hallway afterward, their attorney approached me first. "Your letter carried weight," he said. "It showed balance." I nodded. Balance is simply truth without distortion. My parents approached next. My mother's eyes were red but steady. "Thank you," she said softly. "You're welcome," I replied. My father spoke carefully. "We will follow the plan." "I expect you to," I said. "Not cold, not warm, just clear." Ryan stood a few steps back. He gave me a small look of gratitude. I acknowledged it with a slight nod. Then I left. Outside, the air felt ordinary. Cars passing, people walking with coffee cups, life continuing. In my car, I didn't cry, I didn't celebrate. I reviewed the structure mentally. Public correction, complete. Financial restitution, complete. Therapy sessions, ongoing. Legal accountability, active. No chaos, just systems closing loops. When I got home, I placed the court summary paperwork in a new folder labeled Resolution 2026. Then I opened my desk drawer and took out the USB drive. I held it for a moment. Proof of survival, proof that silence had been strategic, not powerless. I considered deleting it. I didn't. Not out of fear, out of acknowledgement. That file wasn't revenge. It was history. I placed it back in the drawer and closed it gently. Later that evening, Ryan texted. "Ryan, thank you for not destroying them." I typed back slowly. "Me. I didn't protect them. I required structure." He responded with a simple, "Ryan, I understand." That was enough. The truth had been revealed not through shouting, but through documentation. Consequences felt measured, not theatrical. And what remained now wasn't drama. It was maintenance. Boundaries don't end after sentencing. They continue quietly. One appointment, one conversation, one decision at a time. That night, I stood at my kitchen counter and washed a single plate. Water running, city lights outside, routine intact. There was only one thing left to do: close the story properly. A few weeks after the hearing, I was standing in my kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, reorganizing a drawer that didn't really need reorganizing. Receipts in one stack, manuals in another, spare batteries lined up in a small tray. I like order. It reminds me that most things can be arranged, even if they can't be undone. The condo was quiet. Sunlight came through the blinds in thin lines across the counter. The dishwasher hummed softly in the background. I made tea. Chamomile. Nothing dramatic. Life didn't feel triumphant. It felt steady. Therapy sessions continued. Some weeks were tense. Some were simply quiet. My father had stopped using the phrase errors in judgment. He now said, "We were wrong." It wasn't warm, but it was direct. My mother no longer asked me to move on. Instead, she asked, "What feels appropriate to you?" That was progress. Ryan sent updates when asked. He showed up consistently. No more late-night calls, no more half-confessions. Structure had replaced emotion, and something subtle shifted in me. I no longer replayed that night in my head the way I used to. I didn't need to. The facts existed outside of memory now. They were documented, resolved within systems, accounted for. I still keep the USB drive in my desk, not because I expect to use it, but because it represents something important. Proof that silence can be strategic. Proof that you can build quietly while others assume you've disappeared. Sometimes people think survival is loud. It isn't. Most of it happens in small rooms with spreadsheets and night classes, and routines no one applauds. The most powerful shift in my life didn't happen in the courtroom. It happened years earlier, when I stopped trying to convince people I was telling the truth and started building a life that didn't require their belief. Now, when I look around this condo, I don't see what I lost. I see what I built. The skyline outside my window doesn't feel unreachable anymore. It just feels like part of the background of a life I earned. Last month, someone from my firm asked if I'd be willing to mentor a junior analyst. She reminded me of myself at 22. Quiet, careful, watching everything. I said yes. Not because I feel heroic, but because sometimes the most important thing you can offer someone is structure when they don't yet have it. And maybe one day, she'll build something steady too. If you're listening to this and you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do, or you've had to rebuild quietly while people misunderstood you, I want you to know something simple. You don't have to win every argument. You just have to build something solid enough that the truth can stand on its own. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps this little corner of calm conversations grow. And tell me in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I always find it grounding to see how far these stories travel. Two other stories that people return to often will appear on your screen next. They're about rebuilding after betrayal and setting boundaries without chaos. I'll see you there.